At our study, and we're in Exodus chapter 14. Now, what we've looked at already with this is we've seen the children of Israel. They've come out of Egypt, and we talked about how Egypt has a typology associated with it. And that's one of the beautiful things about the Old Testament. The Old Testament has many metaphors, many allegories. It has many types and shadows that if you are tuned into them, you can see the beauty and the connectiveness that the Old Testament has to the work of Jesus and what he did to redeem us. And there's so many different aspects to the actions that we'll see from these particular patriarchs and these different individuals in the Old Testament. So what we're seeing now is the coming out of sin, which is what Jesus provides. He provides our ability to come out of sin. And we looked at that because Egypt is always a type of sin. And so we see them moving out. Now, if you remember, Jesus told the story where he said when an evil spirit is cast out of an individual, that evil spirit goes about in various places and dry places. And when it can't find any rest anywhere else, it says, I'm going to go back to where I came from. And when it goes back and find that place is clean and swept, and he says, well, I'm going in there, but I'm not going there by myself. I'm going to go get other evil spirits and have them join me in there. And this, Jesus said, and the state of that man at the end is worse than that of the beginning. Well, it's an important teaching that Jesus has, because once you come out of the oppression that you have, that doesn't mean that evil spirit will leave you alone. And so what we see here, what we're going to see here in chapter 14, we already saw them leaving out. And you figure, okay, well, they done left Egypt. They're no longer in Egypt. They don't have to deal with Egypt anymore. Well, no, because Egypt now is coming after them. And we're going to take a look at that. And we're going to talk about that on today. So let me just go ahead and cue this up, and we're going to take a listen to our study chapter. Let me just do that, and we're on chapter 14. Let's take a listen.
Chapter 14. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal-zephon, before it shall ye encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, They are entangled in the land, the wilderness hath shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them. And I will be honored upon Pharaoh, and upon all his host, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled. And the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people, and they said, Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? And he made ready his chariot, and took his people with him. And he took 600 chosen chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt, captains over every one of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with an high hand. But the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, and his horsemen, and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea, beside Pi-hahiroth, before Baal-zephon. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord, and they said unto Moses,
Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness?
Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt?
Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians?
For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians, than that we should die in the wilderness.
And Moses said unto the people,
Fear ye not. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will shew to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward. But lift thou up thy rod, and stretch out thine hand over the sea, and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And I, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians. They shall follow them. And I will get me honor upon Pharaoh, and upon all his host, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face, and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. And it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground. And the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand, and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to pass, that in the morning watch the Lord looked unto the host of Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said,
Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared. The Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots, and the horsemen, and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea. The waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord, and believed the Lord, and his servant Moses.
All right. So there we have this wonderful story that we've all been, seen in many movies and different things, and it's a wonderful situation that can get so many means of trust and confidence and the ability to lean on the Lord, which is why most of your movie and Hollywood and TV show folks have always tried to capture this. Because it speaks so much to a variety of different things. And so with it being sometimes so familiar, a lot of times you can just kind of read past it and not really try to stop and look into some of the, I would say the finer details of what it is and how you can make sure that you apply it to your own life and the things that you're dealing with. But as we talked about what happens a lot of times when you come out of problems, when you come out of sin, when you've made your mind up, I'm going to do something and I'm going to do it different, I'm going to go right, I'm going to do the renewing of my mind, I'm going to reject sin, I'm coming out of Egypt, I'm going to walk towards the ways of the Lord. And when you do that, you're going to find yourself going good for a while, but eventually you're going to notice that those same things that you have in your heart and in your mind and in your spirit and in your soul said, I don't want to be a part of anymore, will start to show itself again as a means of trying to reclaim what the power that it had on you at one point in the past. And so we see here, when we open up this first two verses, it says, And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pharaoh between Migdol and the sea over against Baal Zephon, before shall ye encamp by the sea. So basically what it's saying is, when you go out, you're leaving, I'm going to show you a place where you're going to encamp. And basically what that means is where you're going to stop, you're going to sit, you're going to build a fire, you're going to rest, get you something to eat. This is where you're going to kind of build your camp at. And so the Lord is telling them where to stop at and where to build their camp. And so you remember from our last study that the Lord didn't take them the shortest route. Remember? The Lord said, no, we're going to have you go a different route, because if you go the shortest route, you're going to have to encounter a battle, and y'all are not ready to fight. All right, so he's letting them know y'all still have some more development to go before y'all will have enough confidence in me to know that if I bring you to a fight or to a war, I will give you victory, regardless as to how well trained you think you are. But they're not ready for that yet. They don't have that kind of confidence in God. And so it's important to recognize that sometimes God has to bring you a way that matches your faith. It will match the way you actually believe and the way that you actually trust. God is trying to help us to learn to lean on Him. But what is your level of confidence? And so that's where God will walk. The scripture says He will not put more on you than you are what? Able to bear. So therefore right now, Israel is not able to bear the Philistines. They will in the past, in the future, they will get there, but they're not ready now. So the Lord brings them and He tells them to encamp. Now look at verse 3. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, in the wilderness hath shut them up. So what he's saying is, I noticed that they didn't go the way I thought they were going to go, the short way. They went another way, which means they're going to be kind of landlocked. They're going to have all this land and mountains around them, and they're going to have this big old river in front of them. I mean, why are they going that way? Because you can't go that way, because you would have to cross that river. And so Pharaoh's recognizing they are trapped. He says they are entangled. And so that's one of the things that's important to keep in mind, is the enemy tries to look for opportunity when you have got yourself sometimes stuck between a rock and a hard place, and it looks like you don't really have no way out. Boy, that's when God likes to step in. But the thing to keep in mind is that's also kind of like bait for the enemy, because when the enemy thinks, oh, you trapped, you don't have no way of getting out, I got you locked in, I'm coming in and I'm going to make my destruction, I'm going to destroy you, I'm going to cause issue with your life and with your heart and with your mind. The enemy looks for opportunities like that. All right. So Pharaoh's looking and he sees, oh, they are entangled in the wilderness. All right. And look at verse 4. And so the Lord says, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them, and I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all the hosts, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so. So what the Lord is saying, He's already letting Moses know, Pharaoh's coming after you, but I'm still your God. I'm still watching over you. I still have the ability to cover and protect you. So go on and let Pharaoh do what he's going to do. Pharaoh's heart is hardened because I hardened his heart in the way that he is in, and I'm not going to allow him to change. He's chosen this way, and I'm going to allow him to stay in this way. All right. So it's important to keep that in mind. All right. So when you look at now verse 5, it says. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants were turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this? Now look at this situation here. Now right off the bat, they're saying to themselves, why do we do this? You know, now their heart is changed. And that goes back to the story like what Jesus said about the evil spirit when it is cast out, and it goes back and say, you know, I want to go back and grab what I had initially been a part of. And that's what Pharaoh, and if you notice, it says Pharaoh and his servants. Remember when the people were just like telling them, go, get out, leave. And then when the Israelites asked them for gold and silver. They were giving them gold and silver. Said, take it and go. Well, now even their heart and their mind has changed, and so now they are at a point where says, look, they used to serve us. I got to get up and make my own bacon and eggs now. They used to get up and make my breakfast. They used to, get up and clean. I got to clean my own house. I got to go out and get my own milk from the cows and the goats, and I got to go get my own eggs from the chickens and stuff. So they're like, wait a minute. I'm used to having like this automatic, all I got to do is say something and it's brought to me. I got to go out and do it. We need to go back and get these guys again, because this is hard work that they were doing. Well, of course it was hard work. That's why they were your servants. Now you got to do it yourself, and they don't have to change your heart and change your mind. I want them back. I want to go back to the way I used to be. I want to go back. In other words, they're saying we're going to make Egypt great again. That's what they're saying. we're going to go back and do that. All right. And so in verse 6 it says, and he made ready his chariots and took his people with him. Now I want you to keep in mind that chariot, you want to see that a lot in the Old Testament, and you see it a lot here. That chariot represents the superior technology of that day. Like today, we have, we don't use chariots. We got automobiles, jet planes, and then even right now, we are in each other's homes virtually through this technology of the computer and phones and stuff of that nature. So the technology that is in the day, you will find that the enemy will always try to utilize it for his benefit. And so when it says chariot, keep that in mind, that it's talking about we're going to not only take ourselves and those that agree with us, and we're going to use the technology of our day to help advance our cause. And so when he says he's going to go grab the chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt and the captains over each one, that's in verse 7. All right. And so he's going to get not only the people, but I'm going to use all the technology, all the advancements that I have to go ahead and start this. Look at verse 8. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel, and the children of Israel went out with their high hand. So they're at the point now where we're chasing. We're going after them. The Lord has hardened his heart. All he can see now is vengeance. I got to go back and get back what we used to have. We're going to make Egypt great again. And so the Egyptians, and the children of Israel, they are going out and they're moving out and they're going by the hand of the Lord. Look at verse 9. But the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots, taking all their technology, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and the horsemen of his army. So I'm going to get the military. All right? It ain't going to just be me. I'm going to get the military. And overtook them encamping by the sea besides Pahaharoth, before Baal Zephon. Now, the children of Israel are camped. They don't stop walking. They don't build the campfire. They're making their little snacks and lunch and dinner, whatever it is for that particular time of day. And they are just, following what God had told them to do. Now, all of a sudden, they hear this noise and they recognize, wait a minute. That's the Egyptian army coming after us. We're sitting here eating, our unleavened bread and our snacks and warming ourselves by the campfire, resting our legs after this journey. And here come the enemy, full force, all this technology, all this advancement, all these chariots, this whole army. They got the whole military with them. And now here they come after us. And we're sitting here, eating snacks. What do we do? All right. And so all of a sudden you're going to see. All right, look at verse 10. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord. Okay? Right off the bat, you see what you have just left coming after you again. The first thing you recognize is they say they were what? So afraid. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. And that's and that's a natural reaction. You know, sometimes it's interesting, and I remember when we went through our merged gospel, when we went through our gospel where we were looking at the merging of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I was telling you, I said, look at how many different times the Lord will say, fear not, or don't be afraid, and take courage, and so forth. And so we see here now why the Lord would say that, because it was riddled and said so many times through the Old Testament. You're going to see that often again even here. And so what we see here is they cried out unto the Lord, and they was so afraid after they marched after them. Look at verse 11. All right, look at what they say, because they're speaking out of their what? Out of their fear. Verse 11. And they said unto Moses, and he goes, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? All right. First off, they're like, listen, couldn't we have died and been buried in Egypt? You're going to bring us out here in the wilderness so we can die. So in their mind, when they saw the Egyptian army, they already came to the conclusion, what? We're done. We're dead. We have no hope.
That's it.
We're finished. Now, how many times do you go through life when something happens and you just be like, well, I don't see no way out. You know, I might as well just die here, because there's no way for me to get any way past this. I don't see an avenue. I don't see any light. I don't see any way out. We're going to die. And so they say this to Moses. Oh, I guess there was not enough grave sites in Egypt, so you brought us out here into the wilderness so we can die out here. But what are they speaking out of? They're speaking out of their what? Their fear.
Fear.
And their lack of understanding. Because just because you can't figure it out, you do your own math, you do your own analysis, you do your own thinking, and with all of your thinking, and all the thinking of your buddies and your friends and your family and your cousins and whatnot, and your neighbors, you can't think of any way that this can work out. You figure, well, then I guess we're done. But what you forget is that we have to give it to who? Give it to God. Jesus said, cast your cares on me because I care for you. So we have to cast all of that stuff that we can't reckon. We can't figure it out. I don't understand how this can actually work. We got to learn that when we get to that point, give it to the Lord. Now, what we usually do, and when I say we, I'm speaking not only you, but myself. The first thing we do is we get mad. We get angry. And that's what's happening here. They're mad at Moses, man. They're like, you brought us out here so we could die, dude? They're mad. Now they're attacking Moses. You see that? But then look what they go on. Wherefore hast thou dealt so with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? You took us out of our slavery so we can die. So now they're looking and saying, I guess slavery might, being a servant in Egypt might have been pretty good, because at least we'd have been alive. They're looking now. So their whole mind, all that wonderful stuff they had just a couple of days ago about leaving their bondage, now they feel like, well, I don't think this is going to work. Because it didn't go the way they expected it to go, and they came across other obstacles that they didn't expect that they would encounter. However, these are not surprises to the Lord. He is not shocked. He's not going, whoa, I didn't see this coming. The Lord knew about it. So if we're walking according to the ways of God, when we don't get it, when we don't understand it, when we don't see it, when we can't understand what the next step should be, we then always should train our hearts and minds by the renewing of our minds to do what? Let me lean on the Lord. Lord, you obviously know, so I have to trust in you. Well, what are you going to do? I don't know what to do, but I know where to go, and I'm going to trust in God. Well, then what you going to do then? Well, I'm going to wait and see what avenue he opens up. I'm going to wait and see what direction he points me towards. But the first thing I got to do when I'm confused like this is just give it to God.
And have faith.
And have faith, exactly. All right? So look at verse 12. Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians, for it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. So look at that. So once again, in their mind, the only avenue, the only outcome from all of this scenario is they're going to die. That's the only thing they can see. And sometimes when you look at a variety of different things and people tell you, well, the only thing that can happen for you right now is, I guess you're going to die. This particular circumstance is going to end. It's the end of this particular opportunity. And sometimes we just believe it rather than trying to give it to the Lord. Because see, our understanding and our thinking is very shallow and very limited in comparisons to what God can do. And so we can't think on God's plane. We can't think on his level. So there are so many other means in which God can make a way when there is no way. You know, we hear that old song for many years, God will make a way where there is no way. And we sing it, but do we want to live it? Do we want to experience it? God says so. But now, when you go through your life circumstance, that trust, and that's why a lot of times people break up a situation that God could deliver in, and so they don't trust God for a variety of different things, and the next thing you know, they done quit, they done gave it up, they done left the Lord, they done stopped serving the Lord, stopped reading his word, they done gave up on their loved ones and different ones, and yet we have to just allow God to work it out. Now, there are some things that God says, I'm not going to work this out this way, I need you to move. One of the things is which we just studied. God's not going to make them whole in Egypt. No, Egypt, you're coming out. Now they're out of Egypt, and Egypt is now chasing them. Now God's going to show you. Now, I couldn't destroy Egypt with you in Egypt because I don't want you to be destroyed. So I got to remove you from Egypt, then I'm going to destroy Egypt. And that speaks a lot to me. I think of that when I see this, I think about the rapture, how the Lord takes you out, and then Egypt is going to be destroyed. Well, let's take a look and see what happens here. Verse 13. And Moses said unto the people, fear not. Well, we hear this again, right? Stand still. Why do you stand still? Because you obviously don't know what to do. When you don't know what to do, you need to stand still and do what? See the salvation of the Lord.
Salvation of the Lord.
All right. So he says, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. So what Moses is letting them know, there are certain things that you will leave, and then eventually that thing will come after you. But there is a deliverance that you can get to where the Lord delivers you this time, this particular enemy, you won't have to deal with no more. And so this is going to be, when this is all said and done, this is the last time that the children of Israel are going to have to deal and struggle and fight and be in conflict with Egypt. Now, I didn't say they won't have any struggles or any fights, but this is the last one they're going to have with Egypt. They're going to have some other struggles. They're going to have to deal with some other nations, some other spirits, some other demon trenches. They're going to have that, but they're not going to have to deal with Egypt after this. And that's right. They're not going to have to deal with it. And so what that speaks to us is there are certain things that God can bring you through that may chase after you for a while. But at some point in time, God can make it to the point where, okay, you know what? You're not going to have this no more. So you got some people that, they hooked on drugs. And God is, they come out of that, and different things keep chasing them. People still tempting them, and they still feeling like, man, I want to go back. But then at some point, God gives you another deliverance where, you know what? For whatever reason, man, y'all could be in a room full of drug smoking or taking, folks, and it won't bother me at all.
Not at all.
I'm good. I'm totally delivered from that.
Yes, yes.
And that's what's going to happen right now to Israel. They're going to be totally delivered from Egypt. They had them in bondage for so long, and then now at a point where they got free, it's chasing them while they're free. So you can be free and still being chased by that which was your captor, which was the thing that had you in bondage. All right? And so, but what you do, you keep on going in the name of the Lord until God eradicates that completely. So he says, you will see them again no more forever. You're done after this. So look, 14. And the Lord shall fight for you. What? Who will fight? The Lord. The Lord will fight for you. See, oftentimes we get frustrated because we are trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out how to fight, how to deal with it. And we're looking a lot of times in just natural stuff. And I'll tell you what, one of the main things that we think that we gotta have to fight, and sometimes the Lord will provide it, but other times He'll use other ways, and that's money. We think, well, if I ain't got enough money, I can't get this done. I got this other issue. I got this going on. I see some things I need to get happen. I need some things for my people, my family, my and if I ain't got no money. And you just feel like you're just locked. You're just trapped. You're just in the wilderness with nothing to do. Well, those are the things that bring to God. And God will say, no, I will make a way. I will show you how to get through this. And other times, God will just open the windows of heaven and allow the finance to come in. But sometimes, He just allows the thing to get done some other way. When you didn't even have to have any exchange of cash. But that's the reality that we're living in. We're looking for ways to get out. But in this particular time, God told them to stand still. All right? And look, He says, the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. So if I hold my peace, what? The Lord will fight my battle. Verse 15. And the Lord said unto Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me? So now Moses is sitting there. See, this was a time for what? For action and trusting in the Lord. And Moses wants to have a Bible study. And God's like, no, it ain't time for prayer. It ain't time for a Bible study. It's time for you to start doing some action. All right? See, if somebody hires you to fix their car or paint their room or do something kind of work, and you say, okay, well, now let us pray. No, it ain't time to pray. It's time to get the car fixed. It's time to get the paint on the walls. It's time to do what you came there to do. But now, you can be prayerful in your spirit. You can be thankful and trusting in God in your spirit. But you've been given a action by the Lord. So when you've been given an action by the Lord, what should you do? Start the action. Well, I don't know what to do after that. Don't worry about what to do after that.
That's why, brother, when I go out to do painting, I don't complain about it. I just roll it on the wall in the name of the Lord. And I pray that the Lord will touch the people's heart with the finance. And sometimes the Lord will say, okay, well, give him a little extra. But you gotta do what the Lord tells you to do.
I said, Hayward, listen, this is what I do. I said, you put the air conditioner in, I'm going to tell you how to paint. I said, you let me worry about the air conditioner. You worry about the paint. And he just slid it right in the window. So you do what you good at, I'm going to do what I'm good at.
There you go. That's it. You just start doing it.
Yep.
All right. Now, so let me finish up on verse 15. So the Lord said unto Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward. Where are you going? Forward. You're going forward. You're not going back. You're not going back to Egypt. That ain't happening. No, you're going forward. All right, 16. But lift up thy rod. So in other words, that which you already have in your hand. Start utilizing that. Lift up your rod and stretch out thy hands over the sea. Over the what? Over the sea. Well, wait a minute. Usually people that just walk into the sea without any boats drown. So, Lord, are you trying to tell us that you're going to have us drown in the sea? But he's telling them what to do. He says, stretch your hand over the sea and divide it. What's that mean? I've never seen this before. I don't understand this. I don't have no mathematics. How is this supposed to happen? Now, if you sit there and try to figure it out, guess what's going to happen? You're never going to come to an answer, and you're never going to go forward. So when he tells you to do something that you don't understand, you don't get it, you just start putting, let me put one foot in front of the other and see what happens. So he said, divide it. All right? And the children of Israel shall go on what? Dry ground. Wait a minute. Dry ground where the sea was?
That's right.
Wow. Through the midst of the sea? In other words, there's still going to be a sea. There's going to be a sea on my right hand and a sea on my left hand. But right in front of me, if I go forward, if I go to the left, I'm going to hit the sea. If I go to the right, I'm going to hit the sea. But if I go forward, I'm going to be on dry ground. So you got to walk what? That straight and narrow way. If you follow that straight and narrow way, you're going to completely be on dry ground. If you try to go to the left, you're going to hit a wall of water. If you try to go to the right, you're going to hit a wall of water. But if you go straight, you go forward, you're going to be on dry ground. And he says, and I, behold, I will harden the heart of the Egyptians, and they shall follow after you. Now, when you're going through that, guess who's going to try to do exactly what you did? The enemy. They're coming right after you. All right? And so they're going to, the Egyptians shall follow after them, and I will get honor upon Pharaoh, and I'm going to show Pharaoh who I really am. That's what this is all about. These gods that these Egyptians worshipped, that are evil spirits. God is not only fighting against the Pharaoh and his army, but he's also fighting against the spirit behind Pharaoh, the spirit behind the Egyptian. So he's fighting that. God is fighting spiritual warfare on our behalf. And he says, and I will get honor unto Pharaoh and unto all his hosts, upon his chariots and upon the horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh and upon the chariots and upon the horsemen. So what God is saying, these folks, when it's all said and done, they're going to know, wow, the God of the Israelites, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they're going to know that I am who I say I am. And I am greater than all that stuff they trusted in. I'm greater than their chariots. I'm greater than their armies and their military. I'm greater than their technology. I'm greater than all of that. I'm greater than the gods that they were serving, the gods of the Nile and the gods of the flies and the lice and all those gods of the weather, all that stuff that they were worshiping. I'm greater than all of those spirits behind all that stuff that they were trying to utilize to gain power. I'm the ultimate, is what God is trying to let them know. Alright? Verse 19. And the angel of the Lord, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them, and a pillar of cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. So, remember that pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire that they were following? It was in front of them. It went and got behind them, and it got between their camp and the Egyptian army. So now the Lord put a barrier there. So you're wondering, well, how are they going to stop? They're right there. They're going to come and grab us. You know, there's nothing to stop them. Yes, there is. God's coming, and God drew a line between his people and the Egyptian army that were chasing him. And so they couldn't get any further. And so that allowed the Israelites to pack up their camp. Remember, they weren't camping. They were just sitting there resting, got all that stuff out, building their little tents and everything. Now they can get all that stuff, pack all that stuff up, and start heading towards the sea. Wow. We're going to pack all our stuff and just head toward the water? So, this is what they're doing. Look at verse 20. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of the Israelites, and it was a cloud of darkness to them. The cloud of pillar of darkness is what the Egyptians saw, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one camp not near the other side all the night. So it gave light to the Israelites, so that one camp couldn't come to the other camp that whole night. Egypt could not get to the Israeli camp that whole night, because they were dealing with what? Darkness. Whereas the Israelites were experiencing light and were able to, even in the dark night, have light to walk. There was no sun shining, but they had the light of the Lord. So they were able to operate and to do what they needed to do, even in the midst of darkness. So sometimes what happens, you don't know what to do, but then all of a sudden the Lord starts giving you directions, and then you can be in a situation where things are so dark and so bad and so frustrated that you're like, wow, but yet you still are operating when people will say, how is he doing that? How are you able to get this done? Because you can see in the midst of confusion, in the midst of darkness, God is giving you direction and giving you paths to take while other people are trying to figure out what to do. The Lord has already shown you the light. And now it's very clear to you. I know what to do. I can see. Well, how do you know how to put your stuff back on the cart? And how do you know where the mule and where the oxen are? I can know where they are because I can see them. How can you see them in the midst of the night? Because the Lord has given me a vision that He's not given to them. I can see things that they can't see. I can operate in the night when most people can only do this in the day. So when the world gets so dark and everybody gets so confused and running all over the place, they don't know what to do, God can give you that peace and give you light to show you, just keep doing this. Go ahead and pack your stuff up. Don't panic. I got you. They don't see what to do, but I'm showing you what to do. Step by step, moment by moment. You got the light. As you see the light, do what? Walk on therein.
Walk therein.
All right, so keep on doing that. And so that's what they did. All right, and so they had light so that they were able to work throughout that whole night. Verse 21. And Moses stretched his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to back by a strong east wind. All right, so look at that. It said Moses stretched forth his hand over the what?
Over the sea.
Over the sea. And what happened? And Moses opened the sea? Doesn't say that, does it? It says Moses stretched forth his hand, but the Lord caused the sea to go back. So Moses was obeying, but God was doing.
Amen.
We always got to keep that in mind. And sometimes we can get that confused. And we see a lot of people get that confused. They think, well, because they stretched forth their hand, I must have done it. No, you didn't. You don't have that power. That's the Lord that does it. So we got to make sure that we don't get ourselves all caught up. Just because God uses us, it's not our power. I'm not the powerful man of God. You're not the powerful woman of God. You know, it's God working in us and through us. But the ultimate power is of God.
Amen.
And we always got to remember that. And so the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night and made the sea dry land. Look at that. He turned the sea dry land. And the waters were divided. So he divided the water, and at the point of the divide, the ground where it was divided at was completely dry. I mean, how do you explain that? I don't got the math and the science and the physics to explain that. I don't know how that happened. But a lot of people try to figure it out. They try to talk about all different kind of things, and I like listening to it to a certain degree. But when it's all said and done, I'm like, well, the reason why you're trying to figure it out because you don't want to just say God did it. You don't want to have that as a confident thing that you will lean on, because you can't put that in a formula. You can't recreate that in some kind of test tube. You can't analyze that in some kind of quantum theory experiment. And because you can't do that, then you go, well, it either couldn't happen, or you got to create some other kind of scenarios where it happens a certain way, like the water not being that deep or something like that, or it froze over, or it said they went over on dry land. And that's when we just have to relax and let God be God. I'm trusted that God can do the impossible. I can't do the impossible, but God can. So they went over on dry land. Look at this, 22. And the children of Israel went in the midst of the sea upon dry ground. So they don't walk right now. They're in the midst of the sea. So they're in the midst of something that normally would kill you. This would normally mean your death. That means you stepping forward to something that will kill anybody that don't have God walking with them. All right. Now that's what? That wall of water. What do you remember? Remember what else? Remember another individual that was in something that would normally kill him, and that was the Hebrew boys. Remember that? The Hebrew boys were thrust into what? In the fire. And that furnace. That furnace would normally kill anybody, but they were thrust in there in the what? In the anointing of the Lord. And so now we're seeing this as there being God, the children of Israel walking willingly in the midst of the sea that would normally drown you. But they're trusting in God. And they see the water on the left. They see the water on the right. And it won't be a problem as long as you keep going what? Straight.
Straight.
If you go straight, you won't even get wet. You're going to be dry. Alright? And so it was dry ground, and the waters were wall upon their right hand and upon their left hand. Verse 23. And the Egyptians pursued and went after them in the midst of the sea. Alright. So now the Egyptians are looking, well, if they can do that, we can do it too. And that's another thing, see, where you got to be careful. When God makes a way for one person, don't think that you're going to be able to go that same way. You got to go the way God's telling you. So they're just trying to emulate and copy and trying to do very forcibly what they saw God do for somebody else willingly. All right? And so they go through the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. So all of his power, his horses, all of his technology, those chariots, and all of his horsemen, his whole military. And it came to pass that in the morning watch, the Lord looked upon the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of the fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians. All right, so when the Lord saw that they were coming through, trying to do what Israel did, he went down there and caused little problems. We say, what kind of problems? Well, this is the thing that God does just when they think they have the ability to do through their own power what the power of God has done for his people. Look what it says in 25. And took off the chariot wheels. So what happened? The chariot wheels. They put those wheels on with technology and with wisdom, but now all of a sudden God confound their wisdom, and their chariot wheels start not working. All right. He took off their wheels, that they drove them heavily. So the wheels got all heavy all of a sudden, and now they're being pushed into the ground. Wait a minute, I thought the ground was dry, but those wheels are just sinking into the water. I mean, into the dry ground. Was it mud when they were going through? Maybe, maybe not, but it don't matter. God just made sure the wheels were too heavy to travel. Well, why were they too heavy? Their technology was pretty sound. They knew how to build the chariot. It wasn't nothing about the technology. It's God got in and messed it up. And so when God got in there and confounded it, it made it too heavy to actually go through on the dry ground. So that the Egyptians, finishing up 25, said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. So they recognize, listen, we know our technology. We know these chariot wheels are good. And why they are not working now has nothing to do with our ability to build them. We built them right. It must be the God of the Egyptians that is doing this. And so the God of the Egyptians are now fighting. He's fighting for them. And so they recognize it. And that's one thing to keep in mind. People know when God is working. They they understand that God is in the midst of a lot of things, and they still don't want to follow and do the right things. Rather than them just begging for forgiveness, asking for help, they just accuse and fight and argue. And so they're like, listen, God is not working for us. Well, they didn't say, well, then God, since you're not working for us, we must be wrong, forgive us. They didn't go there. They just arguing now amongst themselves. We're now fighting against God. And they will continue to fight against God. Look at 26. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thy hand over the sea, that the water may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared. And the Egyptians fled again against it. And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea, and the water returned and covered the chariot and the horsemen, and all the hosts of Pharaoh that came unto the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. All right. So we see now that once they have gotten, the children of Israel have gotten out of the sea bank through the dry land with the water on the left and on the right, the Egyptians are now right in the midst of that. They're traveling. They're running into issues because their chariots, the technology starting to fail them. And so now God tells Moses, stretch forth your hand. And now we're going to close the water up. We're going to bring back the water to its natural, normal state. And the Egyptian army, all their hosts and all their technology is in the middle of that. And they're going to be what? Covered. He says he covered the chariots, he covered the horsemen, and all the hosts of Pharaoh. So all that technology, all that army, all those individuals were covered. And it says it got to the point when it was all said and done, when they were washed up, there was not one of them left. Look at 29. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the water was a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left hand. So now they're reflecting back. Wow, look at this water. They just covered the Egyptian army. But when we went through on dry land. We saw the water. It was still there on the left. The water was still there on the right. But we went through on dry land. But now look at the Egyptians. That dry land path closed up. And when it closed up, anything that was in there got destroyed. We saw this before with Noah, right? Get in the ark. And if you're in the ark, you're good. But once the door closes on the ark and the rain came, anything that wasn't in the ark drowned. And so we see it was destroyed. And so we see here again, though God said he will no longer ever destroy the world with water, but we see him destroying this army with water. Once again, they died just like the antediluvian age died. They died by the power of water. Water is something else. Water is like if you jump off a high diving board. You ever watch the Olympics and you watch these people? They go up on these real high diving boards, so high. I would never go up there that high, but they go up there and they dive off and they come on down and they jump into what? In the water. Now, if the water wasn't there, if it was just dry ground, they're dead. But the water can help. So the water is soft. But then if you standing still and you get a wall of water come at you, even though water is soft, guess what water will do? Water will take you and knock you out. Water will punch you in the head and knock you silly if you don't hit it right. So water can be used in so many different ways, and God used it just like that. All right, so they got knocked out by this wall of water that closed up on them. All right, finishing up here, and it says, "Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. So that day they were saved from who? The Egyptians. They ain't got to worry about the Egyptians no more. But they still got other fights. They got other battles to go through. But they're not going to have to deal with the Egyptians. And that's a wonderful thing when you can get victory over something that has controlled and had power over you for so long. It's a good thing to get that. All right? And that's something that you can always remember and go back and reflect on. God did give me victory over this. And that's always a good thing. Look at 31, our final verse. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians, and the people feared the Lord. In other words, they reverenced God. They recognized, wow, God is awesome. And believed the Lord and his servant Moses. So now, after they saw all this, they feared the Lord, they honored him, they believed God, and they believed his servant Moses. But now, wait a minute. We go back to the beginning of this chapter. They was telling Moses, why you brought us out here? Were there no graves in Egypt that we could die out there? You brought us out to the wilderness to die. But you see the fickleness. You see the blowing in the wind type of way that they have. You know, one moment they well, we just gonna die, and now they're like, oh, we believe, and we're gonna see this. And what does this speak to? Number one, it speaks to us. How often have we done this? Well, I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. You might not know which way to go, but you know what to do. Trust God. And then God will show you which way to go eventually. And sometimes he can tell you, don't go anywhere. He's going to make the thing that you need come to you. We just have to learn that we always have another dimension to reach to. I'm looking to the left, looking to the right, I'm looking up, I'm looking down. I have no other way to go. There is another direction. And that direction is the dimension of God. Well, which way is it? Is it left, right? Is it up or down? It's not a direction of three-dimensional space or reality. It's another dimension. God lives in his own realm, and that's the dimension, that's the reality that you have to go to when you go to God. It ain't left, right, up or down, front or back. It's God. And he can always deliver. So you always have a way out. That way out is always the Lord. And learning to trust that takes some development of our heart, our spirit, our soul, and more importantly, our what? Our mind. Let this mind be in you, which was also what? In Christ Jesus. In Christ Jesus. And we got to not be conformed to this world, but be transformed. How? By the renewing of your mind. So we have to keep on going through this word, exercising the mental process that God has my best interest, even when I'm in trouble. All right, and we seeing that on our Wednesday study when we're looking at Job, and we're gonna be dealing with that again. The same kind of concept of God's got it all worked out. We just don't get it yet, but He's got it figured out, and we got to learn to trust in Him. So we're gonna stop there. We thank God for this wonderful chapter. So Lord willing, on next week we will get these children of Israel a little bit further. But we got them out of Egypt. And we now got Egypt out of the way as a pursuer. But we're going to see later on that they got some spirit of Egypt still where? In them. So we'll see that as well going forward.